There are some units in Squad Busters where getting more of them is amazing. Like if you can get 9 Archer Queens, 3 fusions, you have over 100% range DPS increase, which is disgusting. But other units, like let's say a Dr. T, do almost nothing for you if you get more of them. So the goal of this list is to identify for you which units you want to draft lots of and which units you actually can draft only one, like a Dr. T, and call it a day, or a unit like a Pam, where you go for a fusion. There's a lot of value in that, but beyond that fusion, there is very little value to having more of that unit. And to make this distinction really obvious, let's start with some units that it's good to fuse, but you'd only ever do it once, and it's very obvious. For example, you have your Mavis, and also you've got your Greg. Okay, you only need one to pluck the carrots or chop the trees. You get your maximum value there, compared to your Barbarian King or your Queen, where you would just draft as many of those as you can to fulfill whatever it is your squad is trying to do, whether it's range damage or you're doing close combat damage. These units are amazing, and you take lots of them every opportunity you could. And I realized that when Dr. T entered the game, that this list was an important thing to talk about, because Dr. T is the sort of unit you'd only ever want one. And beyond the first, I don't find there's astronomic value. There is some value, but it's so little you'd rather have some other unit in your squad. So a one of Dr. T is actually pretty cool. And although you're used to going for fusions, don't do it with a Dr. T. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, you can make an argument for it, but given what I know now, I'd say just draft one and call it a day. In fact, there's another unit I would put into this category of only drafting one that might surprise you, and that's actually going to be a Mortis. And you'd be like, wait, hold on, why? Well, the reason is that Mortis is giving you a number of units that you can have in your squad that you rise from the dead. But here's the thing. The reality of the end of the match is that there's not going to be that many things you can add, and the DPS of all the squads is so high that you're gonna get those burst out, and there's certainly no reason to have an upwards of 12 monsters in your squad if you had a fused Mortis, because you'll never find 12 monsters, not before you'll find a player who kills a bunch of them. So you get the overwhelming majority of the benefit from the Mortis with just one in the squad. Now, if you happen to be drafting him early, I guess you could go for a fusion, but even then, you could make an argument that going for other things might get you more value. But I think drafting only one is probably the pick there. Meanwhile, drafting many. I mean, obviously, like, the Trader is amazing for drafting many. You'd be very happy to get lots of bees, or happy to get lots of tanks, or even happy to get lots of Jessies, because Jessie is going to make it so that your turrets all attack faster at the Ultra tier, which is really good. If you do not have an Ultra tier Jessie, and most don't, you could even make a debate to say maybe you just fuse this thing once, but we'll put it all the way up here for now in the draft mini category. Even pennies can be a game-changing amount of gems when you're playing your match. And there are some units we need to put into the fuse only once category. Let's talk about the Pam. Now, Pam is giving you a heal field and a heal station when you summon her. And if you need the heal station, okay, draft one beyond the fusion, okay? But most people don't. And once you get to a fused Pam, she increases the size of the healing field. Well, that's really valuable. There's really no debating it. But getting more Pams is not increasing the strength of your healing or the size of your healing field. So I was in a game where I had drafted 2 fused Pams and I felt underpowered. I was like, wait, is this even doing anything for me? And the answer was no, it's not. Wow, good thing I figured that out. Now you all know. Another unit I would put into this category is probably a Hog Rider. Like, the key to this effect is that you get a speed boost when you go through grass. That's like the majority of it. One fused Hog Rider is probably good enough. But while we're on speedsters, you'd probably want a lot of maxes, but probably not a lot of chicken. Like, one fused chicken, if you're using more than that amount of boots in a match, you are somehow misusing your speed boots, probably. So one chicken is good enough. Also, you'd probably only ever want one bow. Like, the mine effect is kind of a cool add to the squad, but more than one bow, I don't know how you're gonna handle other players. El Primo's in a similar situation where, like, the DPS is too low. I'm all for having one fused El Primo in the squad. Watching him jump around is pretty dang fun if you're busting people up. It's actually pretty legit, especially if you needed the front line, but more than one is probably an error. But hey, you want a lot of Shellys? I support you. You could use a lot of Shellys. You could argue for only one, but I think they're awesome. Same is true with the Barbarian. Technically, you could do this with the Colt, although he's a little squishy. technically you could do this with a Dynamite, but let's talk about a unit you only want one of, and that'll be one fusion of a Goblin. See, here's the thing about a Goblin, okay? He's giving you coins when you summon him. And when you think about the number of units you get added to your squad, if your first 3 picks are Goblins, it is amazing how far those coins are going, okay? It is so awesome. But toward the end of the match, when your units are costing you 40 gold, 30 gold, even 25 gold a pop, the Goblin, he ain't paying for himself, and he does not have the punch. So you might fuse that once at the start of the match, but then you're done. Don't do any more of those. I also feel that's very true for the Wizard and the Ice Wizard. And the reason I think that's true for them is that although they have good AoE splash damage, the reality is that you get a lot of the value even from just one of them. But I think you still want to fuse these units. Unlike your, Dr. T, where it's really hard to observe the benefit. I think going for more Wizards is fine. I think going for more Ice Wizards is fine. You could fuse that once, but then I would probably stop. Also, I don't know, do we put this in the should you even draft it at all category? But I find the Royale King, sure, it's kind of cool to have one, and it is noticeable if you have a fusion, but compared to the power level of all the other things you could be doing, I feel like if you're drafting more than one Royale King, you're probably losing out on value. Similarly, you might have thought, oh, with the Battle Healer, I'd like to get as many of these as I possibly can, but I would actually put the Battle Healer in the Fuse Once category. Her DPS is way too low. So if you build a squad with lots of Battle Healers, you're not going to be able to actually fight other teams successfully. I mean, you might find a situation where you'd find it really good, but, and there's not a hard limit on this one. Unlike other units like the Pam, okay, I guess if you were in 1 coin chests, you could keep drafting them, but anytime I've put more than 1 fused Battle Healer into the squad, I'm kind of like, wait, why have I done this? My DPS is so low, I can't do any of the things I wanted to do, and it's actually hurting me to not have the right balance of DPS and survivability. There is a balance there. You need DPS, and burst DPS is really valuable. She brings you none of that. This brings us to the Witch, which I think you would draft many of them, but there is a limit to the number of skeletons on screen, and because of that, you could even make the argument that you fuse her once and call it a day. If you're limited to the number of skeletons you can have, and that limit is not constrained to the number of witches you have, I don't actually know. But I feel like witch, yeah, 1 is good. I don't know that you really want that many more. Same is true of a medic. I think technically you could do many Nitas, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of frontline, in my opinion. Just like your El Primo, cool to have 1. If you are in a situation where it's one of the only frontline units you can do, yeah, fuse a couple, I suppose. Good luck with that. But when we think about what you get out of Anita compared to a tank, compared to a Jessie, right? Compared to a Penny, the value is just not there, man. It's just not there. Lastly, we got a heavy. I think you could go for multiple heavies. I don't love it. You could if you had to. We'll put them up here, all right? In the draft many category because you could do it. So this means the units I think you probably should only ever draft 1 of is your Dr. T, your Mortis, and your Royale King. The units that I think you go for a fusion on, it's worth it, is going to be your Mavis, Greg, Pam especially, Battle Healer, Goblin, Hog Rider. Technically, you can get value for more Hog Riders, especially at the Ultra tier, but I find that if I do more than 1, I'm really missing out on DPS that I wished I'd had. Same is true with Chicken, 1 Bow, 1 El Primo only. In my opinion, 1 Wiz and Ice Wiz, and by the way, those 2 are amazing together. 1 Witch, 1 Medic, or 1 Nita. And after that, squad diversity is really valuable. But there are units where you do not care about squad diversity and you just keep drafting them, okay? Queen, King, Traitor, Bee, Tank, okay? Jessie, Penny, Max, Shelly, Barb, even Colt, you could get a couple of those. A pair of them is pretty good DPS. Dynamite, hey look, he's great range DPS. There's a reality here, he is. Especially you pair with the right things. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to say Dynamite is insane. I'm just saying you be okay with a couple fused Dynamites. And finally, the heavy. I think that works out. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, throw a like on here and consider subscribing. I've got a couple videos about the Ice World that you might not have seen, covering the ice units like Dr. T. You want to see why you should only draft 1? Check the card right over here. Maybe it's over here. Probably over that way. 1 video. Click it.